Hello everyone, my name is Hari Krishnan. I'm a microbiologist by profession and a mycologist by passion. Today we'll learn a little about mushrooms. So in this particular module, first we'll be covering introduction to mycology, next classification of kingdom fungi where we'll be discussing different phyla that comes under kingdom fungi. Further, we'll be studying about mushrooms and how they are different from fungi. Further, we'll be learning a little about life cycle of mushrooms, then anatomy of mushrooms which will help us in identification and learning deeper about different types of mushrooms. Then we'll discuss a little about substrates, types of mushrooms, and also the role of fungi in nature. What is mycology? Mycology is a branch of science that deals with the study of fungi. So, to understand mycology, first we have to understand the different characteristics that the fungi exhibits. So, the first and foremost characteristic is in the cellular level, that is, fungi possess a eukaryotic cell. This means that their cells are developed or they contain a well developed nucleus with a nuclear membrane, and they also contain cell organelles which are bound by membranes. In contrast to the primitive cells that are bacteria, so the bacteria possess a prokaryotic cell. So pro means primitive and eu means true, that is true cells. Next, they are non-vascular. This means that they do not possess a well-defined pathway for transport of materials. In case of plants, you can see that the water and food are transported throughout the plant body through xylem and phloem. Similarly, in humans, you can see that there are different pathways, well-defined pathways for transport of different materials. You have the digestive tract for transport of food. You have the blood vessels for transport of blood as well as oxygen to different cells. And you have the respiratory system for the transfer of air. The fungi does not possess such well-defined pathways for transfer of materials. Hence, they are non-vascular, non-motile. So these organisms, the vegetative cells of these organisms does not possess any locomotive structures. So when we discuss about microscopic organisms, the motile microscopic organisms possess flagella and cilia as major locomotory organs. In case of fungi, the vegetative cells does not possess these structures. Hence, they cannot move from one place to another without the help of certain media. Next, they are achlorophyllous. Achlorophyllous. This means that they do not contain or they do not possess chlorophyll. We all know that chlorophyll is a pigment which helps in photosynthesis. As these organisms does not possess chlorophyll, they cannot prepare their own food. So they depend on other things or other matter for their food. We'll discuss about these mechanisms in the later slides. Next, these organisms are either unicellular or filamentous. So when we talk about unicellular fungi, you can see that the yeast that we used for cooking, so the baker's yeast and the brewer's yeast, right? So these yeast are Some of the examples of unicellular fungi. So there are different unicellular fungi. For example, the yeast, common yeast, that is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. There are also other single cellular yeast or unicellular yeast that are present on our body, like the Candida albicans. So these are examples of unicellular fungi. When we talk about filamentous fungi, majority of fungi have a filamentous structure. So these fungal bodies are composed of thread-like structures. So these are the primary characteristics of a fungi. So if an organism possesses all these characteristics, we can call them as fungi. Classification of fungi. So as per a paper published in 2020, kingdom fungi is classified into 12 phyla, out of which you can see here as per the pie chart, Ascomycota and Basidiomycota are the two major phyla. So these classifications are majorly based on their phylogenetic relationships, that is how they are genetically related. Also, they are related to the types of spores and other reproductive structures. So in Ascomycota, there are 83,837 fungal species that are described yet. In Basidiomycota, we have 48,405 fungal species. Rest of the phyla possess comparatively very less fungal species. When we discuss about mushrooms, the majority of mushrooms, or all mushrooms in that case, comes under Basidiomycota, primarily Basidiomycota, and some under Ascomycota. What are mushrooms? We discussed about fungi, and we said that certain fungi possess the ability to form mushrooms. So what are mushrooms? Mushrooms are nothing but the fruiting bodies of fungi belonging to the phylum Basidiomycota and some in Ascomycota. So if you compare the fungus to a tree, so the fine thread-like structures that are present throughout the area where the mushroom grows, that particular thread-like structure is called as the mycelium. So the mycelium can be compared to the tree. So the mushrooms can be compared to the fruits. So what is the purpose of fruit? So the fruits provide protection and nourishment to the seeds, and when the fruits or the seeds mature, what will happen? The fruits will release the seeds, right? Similarly, mushrooms are comparable to fruits. They contain the seeds that are spores. So mycelium is comparable to the tree, mushrooms are comparable to the fruits, and spores are comparable to the seeds. So similar to the seeds, the spores will germinate to form mycelium, and the mycelium will again form the mushrooms. So here in this particular diagram, you can see the mycelium that is spread throughout the surface of the or the ground. Here the surface is soil, so you can see it is spread throughout the soil. Now this mycelium is composed of thin strand-like structures called as hyphae. So multiple hyphae combine to form mycelium. Now these hyphae, They are arranged in a particular manner to form the fruiting body. The spores are produced at the tip of these hyphae. That is the basic structure of mushrooms. In the next slide, you can see the life cycle of mushrooms. Mushrooms produce spores. Okay, so what are spores? As I've mentioned earlier, these are cells that can remain or survive through unfavorable conditions, right? So when the spores are met with favorable conditions, they germinate. Okay, so they germinate when they are met with favorable conditions, and each spore will produce a single thread-like structure called as hyphae, and two hyphae from two different spores mate to form the fungal mycelium. Okay, so the fungal mycelium is produced. How is it produced? Spores will produce hyphae, so they will produce, each spore will produce a single hyphae, and the hyphae of two different spores will mate together to form fungal mycelium. The fungal mycelium, when there is a favorable condition, the fungal mycelium, what it does, it produces the fruiting body or the mushroom on which the spores are produced. So spores will form hyphae, hyphae will mate to form mycelium, mycelium will form the fruiting body, and the fruiting body at the end produces the spores, and the life cycle continues. Anatomy of mushrooms. So in this session, we will be discussing about different structures that a mushroom possesses. So here I have depicted a basic structure of mushroom, wherein it contains a cap on top, then there is a long stipe or the stem. So the stem is called as stipe, and there is a base. So at the base there can be different types of structures. So here in this particular image they have shown the volva, which is a type of structure that is present at the base. It is not present in all the organisms or all the fungal mushrooms, but in some mushrooms they possess the volva. Now on the stipe you can see there is a small membrane like structure called as the ring, right? So this particular ring is called as annulus. All mushrooms does not possess an annulus or a volva, but these particular form of mushrooms possess a cap and a stipe, and on top of this cap you can see different types of structures based on the mushroom species. On the image on the right you can see an agaricus species. So the button mushrooms, the store-bought button mushrooms, are also under the genus agaricus. Here you can see the cap, the stipe, and some parts of the annulus. You can see the remnants of the annulus. Another important aspect of mushrooms are substrates. What are substrates? I had said earlier that they do not contain defined pathways for digestion, or they do not contain a digestive tract. Also, they are achlorophylls, so they cannot produce their own food. So what these particular mushrooms do is that they grow on top of their food. So they grow on top of their food. They release enzymes onto the food, digesting the food, and they take in the digested food and utilize it. In contrast to this, in humans, what we do, we take in the food and inside the body will digest it using the enzymes. In mushrooms, they secrete enzymes outside, digest the food, and then take in the digested food. So, the food that they are growing on is the substrate. Just like any other organism, they also have their specific range of favorite foods. So, these mushrooms can only survive on top of their preferred substrate. So I have listed out few common substrates. Here you can see the decomposing wood, wood chip, leaf litter, hay, etc. So these are all uh, substrates that are derived from the plant. So these are decomposing plant matters. Next is a live tree. In case of live tree, it can either be parasitic or it can be non-parasitic. Next is the fertile soil. Fertile soil is very rich in organic matter. So these particular mushrooms, what they will do is the mycelium will digest the organic matter and they take in the food. Next is coprophilous fungi or coprophilous habitat. In coprophilous habitat, so the coprophilous means dung loving. So coprophile, copro means dung, coprophilous means dung loving. These are mushrooms that prefer dung as substrate. There are different species of dung loving mushrooms out there. Next is entomopathogenic fungi. Entomo means related to insects. Pathogenic. So these are fungi that can cause infection in insects. So they parasitize the insect, draws the nutrients from these insect, eventually killing the insect, and they continue the life cycle. Next is mycorrhizal fungi. This particular category of fungi possess relationships or rather symbiotic relationships with trees, especially the tree roots. Hence the term mycorrhizal. Myco meaning related to fungus, rhizal meaning related to roots. Next is mushrooms that parasitize other mushrooms. So these are the basic types of substrates or sources of nutrients for different types of mushrooms. So a particular species of mushroom may possess the ability to utilize either one or more of these substrates. So on the next slide, you can see different mushrooms growing on different substrates. So the first one you can see a Satharella species, that is a brittle stem growing on decaying wood. So this particular mushroom is called as brittle stem because they have a very brittle stem which tends to break on handling. Next, you can see a Mycena species growing on a leaf, and on the next image, you can see a wood deer, Auricularia species, growing on a live tree. So the first two are substrates related to decaying plant matter, and the next one, that is Auricularia, it is growing on a live tree. Next is inocybe. So inocybe, if you see, it is growing on uh, a very fertile soil. So the soil is rich in organic matter which supports the growth of the mushroom. So inocybe is known as fiber cap because of the fibrous texture of the cap. You can see the chlorophyllum molybdites. So it is also known as false parasol, the same growing on soil. Now this inocybe and chlorophyllum molybdites are both toxic mushrooms, and the chlorophyllum molybdites is one of the most common mushroom that causes gastrointestinal distress, and it is known as false parasol because it looks similar to another edible mushroom known as macrolepiota, and that macrolepiota is commonly called as parasol mushroom. So hence this mushroom is known as false parasol. It is also known as the vomiter because it causes gastrointestinal distress and cause vomiting on consumption. Next two mushrooms on the bottom left corner are coprophilous mushrooms. So the first one is Ascobolus. Ascobolus is a member of Ascomycota. It is not a member of Basidiomycota, but still these fruiting bodies can be considered as mushrooms. Then next one is a member of Satyralaceae family, and you can see it is growing from cow dung. Further, you can see the next image, which is a mushroom that is infecting or parasitizing insect. It is an Ophiocordyceps species. Ophiocordyceps, Cordyceps, Isaria are few entomopathogenic fungi that infect insects and eventually kills them. Further, on the next image, you can see a mycorrhizal mushroom. It is an Amanita species. Amanita from section Vaginaceae. Members of this particular section are commonly called as grisette mushrooms. Further, you can see Asterophora, which is a mushroom that infects or grows on another mushroom. That is, it parasitizes another mushroom. So Asterophora grows on Russula, certain Russula and Lactarius species. In the next slide, you can see mushrooms growing from unusual substrates. Although it seems unusual, these are all plant-based substrates. On the first few images, you can see mushrooms growing from fibrous plant-based substrates that are used for making mops. And you can see mushrooms growing from mat and rug and also from wooden floorings. Although they seem as unusual substrates, these are substrates composed of compounds that the mushrooms can digest. Hence, they can thrive on these substrates.